just, I would say, increasing headwinds that have really squeezed our margins, made it a lot more difficult to remain profitable over the past couple of years. And really, we believe that there's a few forces at play here, and we've summarized them as three key forces. The first being that competition has just become so much more intense, right? Everyone and their dog is doing the exact same thing. So trying to differentiate in the sea of sameness has just become, doubtfully impossible. But more so than that, I would say the explosion of channels and the accessibility to e-commerce has also presented an issue. It's become so much easier to go online nowadays that obviously the competition reflects that. Secondly, privacy concerns, regulatory laws, as well as the elimination of third-party cookies have made it a lot more challenging for merchants to track consumer behavior, which begs the question, if we're not tracking consumer behavior, what are we tracking? What are we improving? So of course, these are real issues, real challenges that merchants deal with. Rest assured, there are solutions. And thirdly, digital advertising or performance marketing as a whole, we've seen a massive decline over the past couple of years of the efficacy of these type of tactics. At the end of the day, communication channels. In fact, we've seen a decrease of over 50% in the efficacy of these channels. And coupled with, I would say, a weighted average of all industries considered, a conversion rate of roughly 2.17% that we see as a standard nowadays. There's no questions here of like why merchants are really struggling, right? Really, when you think of it from a high level, they've been hit at the knees with three real core components of their business: acquisition, conversion, and retention, right? So although merchants can control their macroeconomic, environments and being able to control for, at the end of the day, all these issues, there are, however, tactics and strategies that can be applied to, number one, increase conversion rates, drive up those transaction values, reduce customer returns, and keep customers engaged, keep them loyal. So, increase customer retention, which is exactly why we've started this ROI webinar series. The whole purpose of this series is to provide merchants like yourselves, big or small, around the world, with pragmatic solutions on how to grow in this environment, as well as remain profitable. So for each series, for each webinar that we will be holding, we will be focusing on one specific solution, and we will be hosting a couple of industry experts. In this case here, we have Attentive and Shopify. So for today's webinar, as there's no secret in terms of the actual topic, it's growing your revenue using SMS as a channel. So without further ado, let me introduce the two speakers today. Spencer Malm is a senior partner manager at Attentive. Spencer helps agencies and technology partners and their retail e-commerce channels scale successfully, as well as drive more revenue to their brands. Alessandro is a senior merchant success manager at Shopify Plus, without a doubt the world's latest and fastest growing e-commerce platform. And Alessandro similarly works day-to-day with Shopify Plus merchants and ecosystem partners to solve some of the trickiest problems in the business. He also helps them scale and grow revenues, of course, a topic on everyone's mind. And we're especially excited to have Alessandro join us today because he'll be sharing specific examples of how Shopify Plus merchants have really embraced SMS to try to grow their businesses. Before I hand it over to Spencer and Alessandro to kick it off, I just have a few housekeeping items and announcements to make. So firstly, we'll have plenty of time to do some Q&A. We should be wrapping up by 2 p.m. today, so we'll plan to finish the majority of it within, I would say, 30-35 minutes of the presentation. So with that being said, please do type out your questions into the chat. We'll make sure that we're monitoring those, and we'll be triaging the questions accordingly once it's time for Q&A. And lastly, please keep your mic on mute so that there's no disturbances during the presentation. So that being said, let's get started. Over to you, Spencer and Alessandro.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. And hello, everyone. Appreciate you guys taking some time to join us today. As Dennis mentioned, my name is Spencer. I'm a senior partner manager working with our ecosystem partners over here at Attentive. For those of you that probably doesn't make sense for, that is our agency, tech partners, and brands that really revolve around the Shopify ecosystem. So been able to gain a lot of insight into just the market as a whole from a tech perspective, an agency perspective, and even brand perspective, and really looking forward to kind of walking through some of the opportunities that lay in front of you today. For those who haven't had any previous exposure to Attentive prior to this, just a quick background. We are a leading SMS provider with really our mission is to turn SMS and mobile messaging into a top performing channel as quickly as possible, working with well over 5,000 brands. And across the board of those 5,000 brands we're working with, we're driving about 20.5% of online revenue through utilizing the channel. Now, the point of today is not to just go hammer into Attentive, but really discuss the channel as a whole and how it fits into the ecosystem, especially considering some of the changes and challenges that face merchants today. So I wanted to start off by, just taking a pulse on really how we got to where we are today and look at what are some of the challenges that you as merchants and marketers face. The first thing and the underlying theme of today's call is I'm sure it's no secret that consumers are getting much harder and more difficult to reach them. Some of the changes that are happening on some of the traditional channels, some of the social channels are making it increasingly difficult to, really acquire and retain customers. And there are a few reasons that go into it. We'll walk through a few of those examples. So when we look at some of those channels that, are kind of to check the box when you get started as a brand new company or as an emerging company, they're those channels that you have to have, like paid social or paid display. Over the past couple of years, performance has been declining. Don't think anyone here can really deny that. And there's one big factor that's really led to this, and that's the changes that we've all probably heard of that happened along the lines of iOS 14. It's really having an impact on our ability to target brands really effectively and is making it a lot more difficult, impacting performance, and also a lot more expensive. When we were going through the holidays last year, I remember talking to a bunch of our agency partners that actually were managing paid ad spend, and all of them were just like, you would not believe how much more expensive it is this year as opposed to last year. On the flip side, some of the other traditional channels that we think about are also being impacted as well. Prior to Attentive, I came from email, and it's really no secret that email performance has been declining year over year. And there are a few upcoming changes that should be on everyone's radar that could make it more difficult. One of them being iOS 15. Apple is evaluating taking away the ability to track open rates, which poses a huge threat for, new costs, impacting deliverability, and the ability to make strong segments based on being able to see who's actually engaging and opening these messages. On top of that, they're toying with the idea and recommending that consumers actually utilize fake email addresses when interfacing with brands, which can create a lot of problems if, as a brand, email is one of your primary sources for your CRM, because it'll create a lot of clutter. It'll impact your overall data hygiene and will be not the most effective when it comes to actually engaging with your most active customers, because a lot of the message you would send to a fake email wouldn't ever be interacted with. So given these changes, there are new avenues that can be pursued and looked at to connect with consumers, which opens up the question of how do we reach consumers? Now, I'm assuming all of you know what I'm teeing up here, considering I work at Attentive, but we want to start looking at where consumers are and where the money has been flowing trend-wise over the last couple of years. And it's no secret that consumers are actually just becoming more comfortable making purchases on their mobile devices. And I really think COVID had a huge impact in really increasing this, especially just looking at my own personal life. Like, I remember that back during like full on lockdown and quarantine, I made way more purchases while I was sitting on a couch watching a movie on my phone than I honestly would like to admit. So outside of us being just more comfortable making purchases on our mobile device, we're spending a lot more time on our mobile device, and we want to evaluate how we're spending our time on our mobile device. And it's interesting to see, and probably isn't a surprise to most people, that the messaging app is without a doubt the most popular app. A big question I ask though is, what age range does this cover? And what's cool about this is it spans across the various age ranges. So I'm sure everyone on here can honestly assume that for Gen Zs and younger millennials, this is true, because that's a generation that was brought up when smartphones were a lot more prevalent. But what's interesting too is this also applies for older generations like baby boomers. And the example I like to see is my parents nowadays, they don't even call me straight up. They'll send me a text saying, "Hey Spence, we haven't heard from you in a while. Give us a call." So you can see the adoption amongst the various generations when it comes to SMS. We dove down into this though, and given the impact that's been had on various channels because of like some of the changes that are happening, we reached out to the consumers directly and asked them, like, is text even a viable channel that you want to communicate with? And 90% of consumers are actually saying, yes, we do want to hear from you over SMS. But the kicker is it's got to be in a personalized fashion. So providing messages like transactional updates, promotions, exclusive content to give a really VIP experience is really a primary driver in getting people involved. So it opens up the door for this new avenue of communication because smartphones provide a strong way to improve personalization for a few reasons. The first is they're accurate. So I would assume, or I'm not a gambling man, but I would bet probably 95% of the people on this call today have one phone. And they have probably the same phone number you've always had. So they're constant. I've had the same phone number for over 15 years, and my whole life turned upside down if for some reason I had to get a new phone number. We also don't like sharing these devices either. I kind of get anxiety when someone else has my phone, I'll be honest with you. And then we're always on them as well. For the folks on the call today, since I'm being honest with everyone, my phone is sitting right here. So whenever the screen lights up, I see what's going on, and we're constantly checking. So most messages are actually seen within the first 5 minutes of you actually receiving them, which opens up the door for SMS as being a new vehicle of communication, because SMS is built from old devices, no cell phones, there's really no SMS. It's very easy and accessible. It's a short format message. You need to provide consent to opt in because it is such a unique identifier for you. And it's just as easy to stop receiving messages as it is to start receiving messages. And then it's very personalized and interactive. The interactive piece is really interesting because most people don't fully grasp this yet, given that SMS is an emerging channel, is you can reply to messages and brands will see them and can have a conversation with you, which we'll get into in a second. So this is a great way to think about a new way of communicating with customers. And what we've seen is when done strategically, when done in a personalized fashion, SMS is driving 10x more revenue per message than email. And what we see and what we're predicting is that in 3 years' time, every business to consumer brand will be expected to communicate with their customers in some way, shape, or form over SMS. So if there's one thing to take away from today's call, you need to start building your database of subscribers because consumers are only going to opt into so many programs and start getting a strong relationship outside of the standard channels that you're used to. So now that we have an understanding of where the market sits today, where the ecosystem sits today, I wanted to chat through some of the two of the biggest questions or conversation topics that we generally run through and discuss with brands when they start even evaluating SMS. The first one is, I've never done it before. How do I even get started? And then the second one is, since it's such a personal channel, I don't want to be annoying. How do I actually communicate with consumers? So going to spend some time going through, okay, step number one, how do you even get people to agree to give you the phone number? And then step two is, once you get their phone number, how should you be thinking about engaging with them? So the first thing is actually growing subscribers. So the hardest thing to do in SMS is get people to opt in. As a matter of fact, if you don't have phone numbers, it's pretty hard to send text messages. So hurdle number one is getting people to opt in. The beautiful thing about SMS is there's so many ways that you can get people to opt in quickly and compliantly, and it's not restricted to a few channels. Tons of options like your mobile web, your desktop web, capturing phone numbers at checkout, in the footers of your website, and social channels like Instagram. And what's interesting about this that most people don't fully understand yet is it's not mutually exclusive to the digital world. So for any of the folks on the call today that have an actual physical brick and mortar location, you can use QR codes in store or text to join campaigns or integrate with point of sale systems as a way to get people to opt in. So there's a ton of flexibility here. And I just want to share with you a few examples as to why and how we can get people to grow very quickly, understanding that you need to provide two forms of opt-in to allow a brand to actually communicate with you. So for anyone on call that's not familiar with this or hasn't seen it out in the wild, this is one of our flows that really is going to streamline opt-in process. It's our patent pending two-tap sign up. And the idea here is for someone to opt in to receive your messages. All it should take is 2 taps on their mobile device. Now, the reason I also really like this flow, and actually something that we encourage for people starting with SMS, is you actually capture email address first. And we integrate with all the major ESPs out there so that you can pass that email address back to them automatically. So you're getting both email and SMS subscriber lists up at the same time. But to walk you through what the flow looks like, step 1, you ask the consumer to opt into email. When they provide their email address, they're then asked to opt into SMS. They tap on this take $10 off now button. You're automatically taken into your messaging app with the pre-filled opt-in language ready to go. When you hit send, you're in. That's how easy it is. 2 taps, you get email captured, you get phone number captured, and then from there you can send the consumer a coupon code or a link to go back to their shopping experience. There's a lot of ways to get people to continue moving through the buying journey. So what's great about these types of flows is that you have a lot of flexibility in how and where you can present them on screen to make sure that you're optimizing and getting the most people to actually opt in. You can A/B test what it is that you're working with. And something that's really interesting too is that we want to make sure that you're sitting in a strong place from a compliance standpoint. So there are a lot of checkpoints in place to make sure that you're not sending or presenting opt-in flows that don't meet specific requirements out there. The one that I always think is interesting is, for ADA compliance, if there's not a big enough color contrast between the legal language here and the background, a red X will say, hey, you can't push this live because it doesn't meet basic compliance checkpoints. But these are all different ways that you can, again, optimize how many opt-ins you get and then maintain, within the rules and regulations of the SMS space. The final example I wanted to share with you, just to give you an idea of how you can expand this outside of just like your website, is leveraging the other channels that you have at your disposal, like social. A really interesting a way to capture is through like Instagram stories. I love this example because it's very simple, like the 2 tap. So how it works is a brand posts an Instagram story, like this graphic shows you. When prompted to opt in, consumer taps on the link. They're automatically taken into the messaging app. Pre-filled opt-in language is ready to go. And when you hit send, you're in. That's how easy it is. Like the 2 tap, just 2 taps, just an Instagram story. And it really does a great way of continuing to engage consumers from not only a social perspective, but then an SMS perspective. So now that we've chatted through a few ways you can start thinking about how to get people to opt in, and you're going to start growing a strong database of subscribers, there's step number 2. How do we engage them in a way that's going to be personalized, have high impact, keep opt-outs low, and maintain engagement post opt-in, post-purchase, and nurture a relationship throughout the whole life cycle? So when you think about engaging with customers, I like to think about the message capabilities in 4 primary umbrellas. The first is triggered messages. So welcome series, cart abandonment, post-purchase. I've got a few examples. I'll show you what those look like in practice. There's campaign-based messages. Think of these as your one-off marketing-esque message, if you will. Transactional messages, very straightforward. I've ordered something. Has my order shipped? Has my order complete? And then customer service. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, SMS is designed to be an interactive channel. So enabling you to actually interface with your customers on a one-to-one basis as if you were texting your best friend. There's a few ways we can set this up, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But to dive into a few examples, one is to go through some of the triggered examples that I had mentioned. There's a lot of opportunities to get started right away. These messages actually drive an awesome amount of revenue. You'll see it return like right away. Welcome series, they really do clean up. You'll see 2 to 6x more revenue per message for welcome series than you will for most email welcome series. And that stands true for like cart abandonment and post-purchase. I'll direct your attention to this average conversion rate for cart and browse abandonment, 19%. Like I said, I came from email, and a 19% open rate is a very good email. And that's just a conversion rate. Again, there's more options though, an opportunity outside of your standard welcome and cart abandonment. You can do back in stock messages, abandoned checkouts, win backs. And what's cool too is you can pull in custom event triggers from other platforms as well that can help promote sends, but I'll get into what that looks like in just a second. The final thing that I think is really interesting about triggered messages with SMS is being able to incorporate conversational into triggered journeys to capture customer data and build unique experiences and flows through SMS. And an example that I love is being able to capture consumer preference data upon opting in for SMS. And I think this graphic gives a great example. So this brand said, hey, thanks for opting in. Tell us what you like. What sneakers do you like? Reply 1 for Nike, 2 for Adidas, 3 for Puma, 4 for other. Based on how a consumer replies, 2 in this instance, you can then branch them off based on an Adidas specific journey, but you can also segment based on that reply too. So let's just say 3 weeks from now, there's a new release of Adi Zero sneakers. You can then go back, pull that list of individuals that told you that they like Adidas and send them a message directing them about this new sneaker release. So those are some of the cool capabilities and how you can engage consumers from a triggered standpoint. I want to talk through a few more of those one-off messages. So there's a lot of promotional capabilities that you can utilize for SMS and use to your advantage. But for the folks on the call, a lot of us have experience with email, and we know that setting up one email is not as easy as just sending an email from your Gmail account. There's formatting, link inputs, all of the fun stuff. I just wanted to, calm a lot of people's nerves really quickly and take you through what it is or how it is you set up a message. What I like to tell brands and our partners and agencies is at the end of the day, it's just text messaging. You got 160 characters to work with. If you want to spice up the message and throw in an image or a GIF or a video, you can. You can include a short link or like a UTM if you want to see performance in Google Analytics. But you're essentially sending out a tweet or sending a text message. So you don't really need to spend too much time creating it. It's quite simple. And then in addition to that, you can utilize segmentation data to then send out those campaign messages to be hyper targeted. And what's really interesting and what I think is cool as SMS grows in popularity is how you can incorporate this into your overarching digital strategy. So we have really strong integrations with our great partners like Shopify Plus and a lot of the ESPs out there so that you can ingest historical purchase data from like a Shopify and use that to build segments. So you're not starting from square one. You can know all the customers that have bought Adidas sneakers and send based on that from the get-go. You can also tie it into email strategy as well. Because of how we integrate with most ESPs, if there is a favorite segment that you have in an ESP, you can take that segment into Attentive and then power sends like that to really orchestrate the channel to work together in your favor. But here's just a few examples that I find really interesting of brands that have sent those one-off messages by leveraging some strong segmentation. Annie Bing over here on the left sent out, an early access to VIP members. Third Love over here on the right sent out a Mother's Day gift kit for all of their subscribers that are based in the New York City area. Just a few really cool examples of how you can get personalized, and something that I highly encourage everyone to think about and be considering is understanding that the messaging is such a short format and you have only 160 characters to work with. Really focus on that A/B testing too. So figure out what copy is working best. Figure out what send time works best. Figure out, what copy is going to be, or sorry, not copy, like what opt-in units are going to be working best. There's a lot of ways to be way more data driven. So that's example number 2. So I think of triggered and triggered and campaign-based messages are a little bit more promotional, but given the conversational nature and directness of SMS, there are 2 other ways that you can engage with customers that isn't promotional, that is going to drive a great experience for customers. The first one is transactional messages. A lot of brands we work with, their customers tell them that they love these messages, and they're so simple. They're just giving them updates on your order. Like, did your order go through? What's your order number? Has it been shipped? Has it arrived? I'm sure for those of you on the phone who have an Amazon Prime or have subscribed to messages like this before, getting that text that says, hey, your package is at your front door is great. And then finally, there's the customer service side of things. So outside of sending updates on the product, you can now use this channel to interface on a one-to-one basis with your customers to support them and continue to facilitate the relationship. And there's a few ways you can go about setting this up. The first way is through that triggered message that I mentioned. You can get preference data there. But if you leverage a customer service platform like a Zendesk or a Gorgeous or a Customer, you can connect your SMS program with them. And let's just say a consumer replies to a message. There's a few things that can happen. You can create a ticket and, like a Gorgeous, for example, connect that customer to a customer service rep, and they can help that customer in real time as if you were texting your best friend. What I think is really interesting about this conversational component of SMS, and find it very interesting, is that of those 5,000 plus brands we're working with, the ones that are actually engaging on a one-to-one basis, the LTV actually goes up by over 30%, which I think is quite interesting. And I think it makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, because if you're able to provide a personalized experience and provide product recommendations based on what the consumer likes, but then you're there to help them over SMS in real time, that's such an authentic experience. And what we're seeing for the most part is retention is higher and recurring purchases go up because of this, tailored experience. So that's, kind of how I like to approach SMS. Those are 2 of the primary hurdles that we run into, that we like to make sure that people understand that it's not as difficult or as daunting as it may seem. And to really wrap things home or bring things home, I'm going to hand it over to Alessandro to talk to you about, how brands have used this in practice and some of the success he's seen from a Shopify standpoint.
Thank you, Spencer. Hi, everyone. Alessandro Paccitti here, Senior Merchant Success Manager with Shopify Plus. Today, I'm excited to discuss how Plus merchants leverage SMS marketing to maximize their e-commerce sales. So thank you for letting me dial in on this opportunity. No pun intended at all. A bit about me. My purpose at Shopify is to help our high growth and high volume merchants be successful. Success is typically achieved when they and their e-commerce agency partners adopt the right strategies, best practices, and technology. As a merchant's partner in e-commerce, a great deal of my focus goes into understanding their businesses holistically, helping them overcome new challenges, and sharing technology partners we trust will help them grow and scale their e-commerce revenue. In that vein, let me share with you some successful SMS strategies we've helped our merchants implement. First, as Spencer mentioned, it's incredibly important to segment your SMS subscribers. Segmentation gives brands the opportunity to match the appropriate tone with the right customer segment. Brands who do this right create the most personalized customer experiences. Second, integrating your SMS with other customer support channels. The main objective is to offer a personalized experience throughout the customer journey, regardless of the channel a customer uses. This can also give merchants a competitive advantage. For example, merchants who are using Gorgeous for customer support can see the products a customer purchased in the past, previous interactions the customer service team had with the customers, whether by email, social, or SMS, and more. So even if it was a good or a bad experience, having insight into all the interactions is what allows brands to create authentic customer experiences. And third, offering a quick and seamless SMS opt-in with Attentive's two-tap opt-in technology. This feature allows mobile This feature allows shoppers to seamlessly sign up by tapping the sign up unit to load a pre-populated text message, and then they tap send to opt in. This clever opt-in tool's ease of use is what enabled Shopify Plus merchant Rebecca Minkoff to generate an extra $8 million in SMS revenue with an impressive 44% average conversion rate on abandoned cart reminder texts. These strategies and applications demonstrate just a fraction of the growth potential our ecosystem partners create for our merchants, whether they're experienced with SMS marketing or just getting started. Now that we've covered some SMS strategies, let's look at when brands should consider offering SMS and how they can implement a successful program. One of the trends we're noticing in e-commerce is a growing demand for brands to get closer to their customers. This is ultimately achieved by creating memorable shopping experiences. Because texts are instantaneous and personalized, when used appropriately, they can be a huge opportunity to reach and engage customers. Now may be the best time to begin SMS marketing if your marketing team is sending any of the following communications to customers. So discounts and sales, new product releases, event promotions, post-purchase follow-up flows, VIP and loyalty info, back in stock notifications, as well as customer service feedback notifications. Also, if your website receives a lot of mobile traffic, this too can be a good indicator to show that the time might be right to start testing SMS marketing. Now you can do this yourself or you can work with the experts. Let's look at what our Shopify Plus merchants appreciate the most in working with Attentive Mobile. Merchants appreciate the white glove onboarding, easy implementation, and a tactical action plan that they provide outlining all of the necessary steps to succeed. This is the type of enablement our merchants want when working with our Plus partners so they can quickly go to market. Because SMS compliance is nuanced and class action is real, Attentive does a great job at positioning themselves to follow all regulations and laws to protect our shared clients, no matter how big they are. Because Attentive has relationships with so many large brands, they're able to offer insightful strategic support, and their industry experience can quickly be leveraged to accelerate a merchant's success in SMS marketing. They also integrate well with some of our popular technology partners in the certified Shopify Plus ecosystem, such as Gorgeous, as we discussed, Klaviyo, and Recharge, to name a few. The more our merchants and agency partners like Tidal can seamlessly integrate e-commerce technology, the easier it becomes to future-proof their brand's tech stack and IT services, whether it's managed in-house or by their agency. Taking a look at how partners can make the amazing and possible better together, merchants who choose to work with our Plus partners face less roadblocks and get things done quicker and better because of how well our Plus ecosystem of app and service partners understand our platform, our merchants, and support our mission to make commerce better for everyone. One of the best forms of feedback I love hearing our merchants say after they've launched their first SMS campaign is, gosh, we had no idea how much revenue SMS marketing could actually generate for our brand. Thank you, and over to you, Dennis, for questions.
Thank you, Alessandro. Thank you, Spencer. Like literally just little nuggets of gold coming out of both your mouths, so very much appreciated. And I can totally echo that thought at the end there, Alessandro, saying, gosh, I never knew how much SMS can actually drive. I see it every single time without fail. So we're going to move on to the Q&A portion of our session today. So just a reminder for everyone here, please do post your questions in the chat. So we have a live chat going here. I have been receiving a few questions privately. I see one here in the chat already. So I'll start with the one in the chat, then I'll move to the ones that have been sent to me privately. So first one is this all done through Shopify, or is there a specific app that we need to add to Shopify to send the campaigns via text? Spencer, I think this one would be with you.
Yep, that's a great question. So you would need to download the Attentive app, and then all you do is just need to set up our integration between Shopify and Attentive. It takes a couple seconds. I'm not the most technical person, and I can do it. So if I can do it, you all can do it. And then in the Attentive UI, that's where you actually go about setting up the messages. That's where you house data to create segmentation, build those journeys and everything. And is where you would see all the data that you can ingest from Shopify. And then what's really great about getting it started and like getting the pop-ups to fire to capture phone numbers. It's just a couple lines of JavaScript dropped on your tag manager. So you can be good to go very, very quickly.
Thank you, Spencer. All right, I've got a good one here. I think this one is, let's see. So given how direct SMS can be, given how expensive, direct SMS can be, what's the ideal amount of messages that should be sent per week or month? I think that's a very relevant question. I think Spencer, is that one for you too?
Yeah, I can take that one. That's a really great question because I would say 99% of the calls I have, I get asked that question. And it's good because people are actually considering how this actually plays out. It is such a personalized channel and you don't want to bother people and you don't want to keep opt-outs low. So we've actually done some pretty extensive testing on it and found that really the sweet spot is going to be 6 to 8 messages per month. So that's roughly like, 2 messages a week spaced out. Something that is pretty cool though, just to kind of hit on outside of how frequently, is there is something put in place in the attentive UI that I like to call smart sending, which won't allow you to send like 10 messages a week. So it'll throttle you so that you're not being annoying. But yeah, to answer that, really the sweet spot is going to be around 6 to 8 messages a month.
6 to 8. Okay, makes sense. Thank you, Spencer. All right, I got one more here. Right, and then in the example you gave, you showed the brand asked for both email and a phone number. Is it possible just to capture the phone number alone without the email address?
Yes, that is a very good question. So you would think that we would tell everyone, since we are an SMS provider, to only capture SMS. What we've seen actually through testing across 5,000 brands is actually capturing email first, then SMS actually performs better than SMS alone. And we have the data to back it up, but me personally, I have a hypothesis that I don't have any like scientific data to back it up by, but I think since consumers are so used to being asked for their email, it's a good way to just kind of ease them in to the opt-in flow. Don't know if that's true or not, but to answer the question, through tons of testing, we found that opt-in rates are actually higher when you get email first than SMS.
Very interesting hypothesis. I could see how that logically makes sense. I'd be curious to dig into that data. All right, we have one more in the chat here. So if we're already using an SMS app via Shopify, will our current SMS customer database be transferred, or would we lose those contacts?
No, I can answer that one. No, you will not. So the way, if you're currently using an SMS program, first off, that's great. Love to see that. Round of applause. But the actual transfer is very simple. So what we do is we'll export the phone number list that you have, and then at Attentive, we didn't really talk about it. We want to focus on just the channel at a high level, but we put a big emphasis on just the compliance. So we'll comb through those phone numbers, make sure that they were opted in compliantly, so that there's nothing that slips through the crack or could be in question, and then you just upload them into Attentive, and you're good to go.
Awesome. All right, I'm really happy to hear that. All right, I've got the really good one here. I think this one will make you think, Spencer. What are some of the most common misconceptions people make when thinking about SMS and retention marketing?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I can jump in here. One of the things our merchants will say is, "Oh, well, my audience isn't going to be texting me. They're older. They don't use a phone or anything like that." And surprisingly, once they capture the right data to kind of identify those profiles, they get shocked with the results, even by just setting up simple automations to like have customers ask where their orders are and whatnot. Because to the many points Spencer mentioned earlier, people are all connected to their phones. It's the closest thing to them. And if it's the most convenient way to get to a brand and get closer to them, then these consumers will leverage this channel.
Yeah, those are I definitely agree with a lot of those points, Alessandro. And to also build on it, I would say probably the biggest misconception I generally run into or walk through is that your job does not stop at the purchase. So there are a lot of brands that get started on SMS, get a customer to, opt in, get the discount, make the purchase, and then they don't use the channel at all to communicate with them, and then turn into the brand that reaches out to them in 2 months asking for another purchase. There is a lot of strategies that can be utilized that honestly aren't even promotional, that can help nurture brands through the relationship to make it so that it's not one-sided. And because a lot of times if it's one-sided, you're sending once every couple of weeks, like you'll get the consumer to forget that your text channel actually exists.
That's so relevant. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I would say both of you, in terms of the frequency as well as the post-purchase experience, there's just so much opportunity to avail of, driving additional, transactions, driving more loyalty, more retention, reducing customer returns even, right? So I can totally echo that. We see that with our clients all the time. I see one more question in the chat here, and then I've got one more on my mind as well that I'd love to ask too. And a couple more that have come in here, so I guess we'll just triage them as they come through. So I am about to launch my Shopify store. Is this something I can implement now in the early stage, or should I wait until I'm a little bit more established? I think, Alessandro, that would be a good one for you.
Yeah, I have some merchants who just have some brands that they've spun up and just got started. And even with enabling SMS in the early stages, they have seen some positive ROI. I mean, it ultimately comes down to how big your subscriber list is. Is there maybe a healthy number, Spencer, that like a benchmark we can rely on to start testing SMS?
So if you asked me that question 2 years ago, I would say yes. But if you ask me now, I would honestly really say no, because it's getting to a point, the channel itself is getting to a level of popularity to where like you're just going to start needing to grow the database as soon as possible. Because like I said, if you don't have people subscribed, you're not going to be sending very many messages. And we've actually seen a greater adoption of brands that are recently launching, starting with SMS too. So from day one, you're capturing both email and SMS numbers. I would say though, a lot of things to evaluate though upon launch is what your launch strategy looks like. Like if you're going to be doing a big push to start on these other complementary channels to start driving traffic, that will be, if there is a big push, that's a great time to get it implemented. But it's better to be involved as early as possible, because you just need to start getting people to opt in. Growing the database is hurdle number one. So the earlier the better.
Exactly. And being clear in your messaging and communication, whether it be putting a banner in an email, on your website, pretty much on your socials. The idea is to make sure that everyone's well aware of this channel and to hopefully get them adopted.
And one thing that I think, Spencer, that I see often when we're working together as well is it's very much so a pay-as-you-go model, right? So it's not a take it all, or you got to send this many messages a month, otherwise no, they all disappear. It really is, you scale as you grow. The list sizes vary from client to client. So I see one more here. So this one is directed towards Alessandro. So Alessandro, what do you think is the main reasons why a merchant might be nervous to adopt SMS into their business?
I'd say the biggest thing is the compliance factor. So Attentive does, like I was saying earlier, Attentive does a really good job at helping our merchants remain compliant and mitigate risk with their robust in-house legal team and just the relevant experience that they have since they've been in the game for a while now. And so this is really what brings the most peace of mind to our Plus merchants before they just go ahead and turn on Attentive and add it to their tech stack.
I'm curious, Spencer, any horror stories you're allowed to share?
Of compliance issues?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more high level, so we're not exposing anyone. But in terms of any issues that have arisen in the past with compliance.
Yeah. So, similar to most channels, most things in life where there are laws, you're going to have people out there that are always looking to make a quick buck off of a lawsuit. I believe one of the terms for them is like an ambulance chaser, where they'll just scour the internet subscribing to all these different types of SMS programs, trying to find one that is non-compliant so they can sue them. And you can, if you don't believe me, just Google search SMS litigation. But something that's built into our platform is what we have called that's a litigator lookup. So if any phone numbers opt into an attentive program, whether it be yours or even other merchants, and that phone number is a known litigator, we automatically opt them out. We don't want them causing any problems. So that's just one way. And then also we keep a number of different things in place to make sure that we're on top of the programs, like audit trails. So every time someone opts in, opts out, every message that's sent is stored, timestamp, tag, just to make sure that if someone was like, I opted out, and you guys kept sending me messages, we can go back to that data, that exchange, and be like, you actually didn't opt out. So it's a lot of things in place just to make sure that your SMS program remains safe. To also build on the question that Alessandro just asked, one thing that I think is kind of interesting and why some merchants are nervous to adopt it is honestly personal biases. And I can give you a personal story to show you exactly why. I almost didn't even accept my job at Attentive because I didn't like getting text messages from brands. Fast forward 2.5 years later, I've had a front row seat to see how impactful it can be, to where it's gotten to a point where it's not the case across the billions of people in the world.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, Spencer. Yeah, I would have never thought that you had that personal bias. That's the first time I'm hearing it too. So it's really cool to hear. All right, I've got one question, and I think the one takeaway from that, of course, so for anyone that's hesitating on the SMS front, right, there's always resources, there's help there to be provided, so don't let the compliance issues scare you. I think there's, technology has advanced to a stage where it's become very, very accessible to be able to do all this stuff, regardless if you're a small business, medium-sized business, or enterprise that's international. So I've had this one question that was kicking around in my mind ever since you brought up the email slide there, Spencer. So specifically, what I was wondering to myself is, if I'm a merchant, I'm thinking like, should I just eliminate, my ESP, my email marketing? Like, I'm spending so much money a month on that. Like, why don't I just use SMS? Because you're telling me it has 10x, the results that I would see, right? So is there a particular balance there, or are you suggesting we just basically throw the baby out of the bathwater, get rid of email, let's just do SMS?
No. So yeah, I had a little bit of talk about some of the changes they're going to email's going through. We don't think that email's going anywhere. It's such a great channel to meet a mass audience base very, very cheap, in a very cheap and effective manner. We just view this as a very complementary channel to it, or vice versa, given that when you get 2 points of data and you're able to work the 2 channels to operate together. And what I mean by that is you can orchestrate them to work in tandem. So like, for example, on a cart abandonment message, like we've seen that a best practice is to send a cart abandonment message 20 minutes after someone abandons their cart. And if the consumer doesn't engage with that message, in comes an email an hour after that. So I don't think they're going anywhere, like I said, because like I said, most people have a much larger email database going into this than SMS. And there's a lot that can be done to, or have the 2 play together to drive like the highest engagement.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, the way that I hear it being spoken of often as well, Spencer, is thinking about multiple touch points, because at some point we're going to see a level of saturation on SMS, we're going to see a level of saturation on email, but combining both, right, truer to that theme of better together, of how can we leverage each tools, all these different tools and all their different benefits to basically accrue to like that final great ROI that we're looking for. So we have just a few more minutes here left between the team here. So I just want to allow for maybe a couple more, maybe a minute or so, until see if there's any more questions that roll into the chat. As I say that, I would say, like, Spencer, Alessandro, is there anything else that you have heard from the questions? Anything that's might have jogged your mind? Anything else that you would like to share with the audience here today?
Do you want to go first, Alessandro?
Yeah, nothing too specific to the questions. One thing I'll highlight is how great it is to be working together as partners. That's including Title and Attentive. The Shopify Plus ecosystem is a really fun space for our tech partners to share ideas, build new things, and see success together with our shared clients. And that's another unique benefit that Attentive brings to our Shopify Plus merchants, is how well they integrate with all our technology partners. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways I wanted to share.
Awesome. Spencer, anything on your
I think there's a few things outside of Alessandro's point of how this is now a channel that can really be adopted across the board, from using data from the various platforms that you use, given that Shopify is so great at kind of bringing everything together, bringing together your email, your SMS, your loyalty platforms, your review platform into one like central hub. It's such a cool opportunity to then take info from your loyalty programs and your reviews platforms and use that to power messages through this new channel, a new form of communication. Is really cool. The other thing that I would say too is, for those that are curious about it, wanting to learn more, you can also reach out to me. I'm sure we'll be sending out an email about it, but my email is just smalm@attentivemobile.com. If you have any questions, we also can give those who attended this a free trial to just battle test it, 30 days, see if it works, which I'm pretty sure it will, pretty confident it will. But yeah, I just appreciate everyone's time and some great questions. And, also.
Oh, I think we lost you there, Spencer.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you. But you were just saying you appreciate us. So
yeah, I do.
I can second that.
I do appreciate everyone, and I would also encourage you to go out there and just subscribe to some SMS programs just to see it in action from the consumer side of things.
Completely agree with that. So, I think we've given enough time to let some more questions roll in. I don't see any more, so I think we'll be good to adjourn. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining today. We're elated to have such a great turnout. Of course, with two powerhouse individuals joining us to chat a little bit more about SMS. True to what Spencer said. So for anybody that's attended today, we'll be able to work with Attentive to provide that free trial. So just to make it super simple, what we'll do is we'll put out an email afterwards, after the session, just to summarize everything. We'll give everyone a recording of today's session. And on top of that, if there is any interest in taking up Spencer and Attentive on that free trial offer, please just either reply to that email or send us an email directly at Titles. So we'll provide all those details over the follow-up email. And then we'll make sure to triage that, get that all set up, treat you guys well. So with that being said, have a great day, everyone. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks so much,
everyone.
Dennis. Thanks, Spencer.
Yep. Bye.